A young radar man aboard USS Yorktown, CV-5, bends over a green scope before dawn. 4 June 1942. The set hums. Blips bloom 90 miles out. He calls bearings to the Combat Information Center, and F4 Wildcats claw into the dark before any lookout can spot a speck. On Midway, SCR-270 operators track a heavy wave, runways clear, guns manned, and PBY Catalinas already shadowing. The enemy believes the ocean is empty. They are flying into a web. Yorktown's talkers stitch radar plots to radio reports and Catalina sightings, turning electrons into time. Time becomes altitude. Altitude becomes surprise. A pilot later mutters, "They were on us before we saw them." That is not luck. That is physics made American. The Japanese strike expects surprise and meets readiness. Their doctrine prizes perfect eyes and perfect formation. Our doctrine adds electrons, a dim room, and trained calm. First passes go badly for them. Spooked crews report more American planes than one carrier could launch. Optimism vanishes. Deep in a flagship, a staff officer circles a note. Unknown number of enemy carriers. Meanwhile, Yorktown is supposed to be dead after Coral Sea. Instead, she hums, guiding fighters like a conductor. In 10 heartbeats, the battle diverges from every war game. Early warning becomes a weapon itself. Details anchor it. The Wildcats carry 6 guns and folding wings. The devastators warming on our decks are slow, but the SBD-3 Dauntless is a killer with a 1,000-pound heart. On Midway, B-17 seconds sit fueled. Marine SBDs crouch in revetments. Torpedo-armed TBFs wait near the water. The Pacific smells of avgas and hot salt. The sun edges up, blinding to lookouts, perfect for an ambush. On Japanese carriers, men trust eyes and timing. On American decks, sailors trust a sweep on glass and disciplined talk. Then the first intercept. Wildcats dive into the incoming formation at altitude, not by accident but by vector. Flak rises from the atoll in bursts. Enemy pilots feel hunted by something they cannot see. Radios crackle on Yorktown with bearings and short words. The web holds. The morning's first lesson lands hard. You cannot outfly a nation that turns science into minutes. The second lesson arrives soon after, carried by men in blue shirts who fight fires while steering a moving city. Before the day is an hour old, Japanese aircrews understand the shape of their problem. They are being measured, mapped, and met by a fleet they believed could not even be here. Bombs slam Yorktown before noon. Steam fades. The flight deck smells like hot steel and gasoline. Then drills take over. Repair parties in asbestos suits charge into smoke, isolating ruptured lines, rigging splinter mats, shoring bulkheads. The ship breathes. Power returns. Flight ops resume as if a giant hand turned a crank. Hours later, Lieutenant Joichi Tominaga leads B-5N Kate torpedo planes from Hiru down to sea level. 2 wakes streak in at 14:42. Yorktown staggers. Captain Elliot Buckmaster orders abandoned ship to spare lives from fumes and fire. But damage control has moved so fast that when new enemy scouts arrive, they believe they've found a different, untouched American carrier. It is still Yorktown. She is hurt, yes. She is finished, no. This is American doctrine in steel. Decentralize, rehearse, trust chiefs. Metal is only as tough as the hands that keep it alive. A deck crewman coughs through a rag and says, "Rig the patch, boys make her breathe." Water curtains hiss, cables are spliced. Boiler techs wring pressure from scorched machinery. Gun crews keep shooting while fire parties crawl past them on hands and knees. Pilots climb into other decks' birds when their own is fouled. Interchangeable parts and interchangeable people make one organism. On the enemy side, a witness admits the anti-aircraft barrage is the heaviest he has ever seen. Tominaga presses in anyway, holds course, and vanishes in spray. Yorktown refuses to go quietly. She stays afloat into, and the next day, long enough to evacuate Calm and send her men back into combat from Enterprise and Hornet. The miracle is speed. What should take days takes hours. Bulkheads are shored with timber cut from packing crates. Hoses leap like veins across passageways. Smoke eaters feel their way by touch. Officers let petty officers run their lanes without micromanaging. If a pump is dead, a work gang pirates fittings from a storeroom and makes a new one. That is the American habit. Fix, improvise, fight. The enemy thinks they have sunk 2 carriers. In truth, they are staring at one ship reborn through training and will. That confusion matters. It clouds their picture, delays their timing, and drains their last chances. Yorktown does not win the battle by herself, but she buys the minutes others need. And minutes, on this day, are everything. In the logbooks, the entry is simple. In human memory, it is thunder the moment a battered carrier taught the world what American damage control can do. Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet 15 TBD-1. Devastators goes in first, low and slow. A storm of zeros cuts them apart. 14 fall. Ensign George H. Gay Jr. hits the water and floats alone. His seat cushion a raft. He watches the rest of the morning as if the Pacific were a theatre. VT-6 from Enterprise and VT-3 from Yorktown arrive next, dragging every Japanese fighter down to sea level. Heads tilt down, throttles firewalled, the sky above opens. Here is the puzzle the enemy never solved. How do you break a perfect umbrella? You make it look down. At 1020, carriers begin turning into the wind to launch. At 1024, SBD-3 Dauntless dive bombers appear high and hard to port. They fall like hammers from the Sunday bomb's strike decks crowded with fueled and armed aircraft. Kaga takes multiple direct hits. Fire leaps down open elevators. Akagi's flight deck erupts. Soryu follows. It is not luck. It is the window created by courage. The earlier martyrdom of the torpedo crews pulled fighters low, scattered the screen, and fixed attention in the wrong place. The Dauntlesses roll in, almost unopposed. In 5 minutes, 3 carriers that led the Pearl Harbor strike become smoking ruins. Men who trained for years lose their homes in the sky in the time it takes to read this page. Gay later says, "I saw the whole thing." Imagine that. An American survivor bobbing in warm water, watching the hinge of the Pacific War. He sees men run across steel that glows red. He hears blasts that flatten lungs. He smells burned paint and aviation fuel mixing with salt. Across that water, you can hear American radios, tight, calm, calling breaks and headings. A lieutenant who will be an admiral for 5 minutes marks his target, trims and releases. He does his job. Another follows, and another. People do not wait for perfection. They make it. The enemy's remaining hope is Hiryu, still able to launch. She will strike back, and hard. Yet momentum has shifted. Japanese staff officers stare at damage reports and whisper one word: irretrievable. On our side, deck crews rearm. Doctrine, rehearsal, and grit keep the tempo high. The lesson is, sacrifice opens the door, skill walks through it, and discipline shuts it behind. Next comes the hand that arranged the meeting, the mind that placed 3 American carriers where they could change a century. Inside a quiet office at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz circles Midway on a chart and decides to change the war. Codebreakers have teased out a truth. AF means Midway, and confirmed it with a simple water shortage ruse. Nimitz acts. He recalls Enterprise, CV-6, Hornet, CV-8, and the patched Yorktown, CV-5. He places them northeast of the atoll. He strings submarines across the approaches. He stiffens the island with Marines, B-26 seconds and TBFs, and long-range search. He empowers commanders instead of babysitting them. He is betting on intelligence and on the American habit of moving faster than the enemy can. Imagine. Raymond A. Spruance will later say what everyone in the fleet felt. The victory began with intelligence that let leadership be bold and wise. Japan divides its forces between the Aleutians and Midway. America concentrates effects at the decisive point. That is the American way. Free minds produce signals. Leaders believe them, operators turn them into traps. The revelation here begins as a question: How do you beat a larger fleet without more ships? You get there first with the most understanding. You turn secrets into minutes, and minutes into kill boxes. Even enemy officers, writing later, admit that poor estimates and overconfidence met rapid synthesis and clarity on our side. The mechanics are not glamorous, which is why they matter. A junior officer drafts a search plan with bearings and distances precise to the mile. A yeoman types the message that makes the ruse. A PBY crewman marks a wake with grease pencil on plexiglass. A marine gunner digs a little deeper revetment because someone told him sunrise will be hot. Thousands of small acts stack into inevitability. Nimitz never touches a throttle or a bomb release, yet he chooses the minutes that will change a century. He lets Spruance and Fletcher shape the fight, keeps them away from a night surface battle, and trusts their judgment when the picture is messy. When the island broadcasts thirst, and Tokyo confirms AF, every needle points the same way. Search planes take their arcs, submarines take station, pilots memorize brevity codes, fuel tables, and altitudes. The web tightens quietly while the enemy sails toward it, believing in surprise. That belief will break in the first hour of battle, and when it breaks, the sound it makes is not loud. It is a soft click in a radio room, where a commander says, simply, execute. The trap is sprung with calm and speed. Raymond Spruance is a cruiser man handed a carrier task force on the eve of battle. Frank Jack Fletcher brings the battered, lethal Yorktown back from Coral Sea. Together they fight like a single brain. One keeps the fleet out of a night knife fight it does not need. The other lends planes and keeps punching after his own deck is hammered. The culture beneath them is the same. Competence over pedigree, mission over ego. Pilots from Yorktown park on Enterprise and Hornet like it is normal, because for Americans, flexibility is normal. Modular parts, modular people, modular power. This is not chaos, it is discipline that empowers initiative. Briefings use plain English, brevity codes, and shared doctrine so a lieutenant can be an admiral for 5 minutes. A Yorktown aviator says, "Ships down, war's not." He straps into an Enterprise SBD without drama. On the hangar deck, armorers heave 1,000-pound bombs under wings, while plane captains check fuel lines with painted thumbs. Flight directors wave paddles, deck edge operators watch the barrier, and the whole ensemble moves like a factory at sea. The enemy expects disjointed strikes, 3 carriers, 3 separate mines. Instead, they meet one rhythm. Spruance's genius is economy. He refuses extra risk at night, then strikes hard when the morning window opens. Fletcher's gift is steadiness. He absorbs punishment, protects the striking arm, and keeps the tempo high by sharing resources. When Yorktown is hurt, her air group keeps fighting from other decks, as if that was always the plan. That is the American habit. Make a plan you can change fast. It looks simple. It is not. It is earned by thousands of quiet rehearsals and the humility to let competence lead. You can feel respect from the other side. Japanese planners assumed hesitant opponents. They meet a team that keeps generating violence from shifting decks. A strike leader who lifted from Yorktown in the morning returns to Enterprise in the afternoon and launches again at dusk. Imagine trying to track that, a target you killed, still punching, its pilots reappearing from another carrier. Morale on our side rises with each cycle. The bridge to the next chapter is a question with teeth. Could a fleet win by outthinking as well as outfighting? Midway answers yes. The proof is measured in minutes saved, bombs placed, and enemies who look up from burning flight decks and understand the truth too late. At Midway, brains and teamwork became decisive American weapons. Picture 2 sailors in the same wind. On Yorktown, a technician wipes salt spray from a CXAM scope and tunes the sweep. On a Japanese carrier, a lookout scans with night glasses. Only one can see beyond the curve of the Earth. The question is simple. Can eyeballs beat physics in 1942? No. Radar turns distance into warning and warning into choice. Combat information centers turn dots into vectors and ambushes. Eyes alone cannot do that across a moving ocean. Technology is not a gadget, It is doctrine. Radar cues, lookouts confirm. Fighters launch with a plan, not a guess. Midway's SCR-270 marks raids while carrier sets knit the picture by radio. The effect haunts enemy cockpits. They always know, one pilot mutters after a near-missed intercept. That sentence is the worst music to hear. America pays in training and trust. The cost for Japan is minutes, surprise, and fuel bleeding away under an unseen gaze. This is a hinge between eras. Japan brings world-class seamanship and brilliant aviators. America brings that plus the lab. We integrate science faster, not just by buying a box, but by building the team around it. You can copy steel. You cannot copy culture overnight. Our sailors read the scope, talk fast, and act faster. Our commanders learn to believe the scope, even when eyes disagree. That is hard, mature, and decisive. Today, when future reports admit that radar could have detected scouts, warned of attacks, and helped find carrier groups far sooner, they tell a simple truth. We reached into tomorrow and pulled victory into today. Now take a measure. A Japanese petty officer captured after the battle, exhausted and bandaged, tells an interrogator, "We thought you were lucky. Then I saw your machines." He is not belittling his own men. He is confessing to the weight of a nation's factories and schools on a fighting deck. Meanwhile, an American seaman wipes his hands and says, "Scope's clean, fighters away." That contrast is the war in two sentences. One side brings courage and craft, the other adds a revolution in how to see. Bridge to what comes next is simple. Men who fly low will buy a window. Men who dive will take it. And a ship that refuses to die will keep the door open long enough. From here, the story gets louder, because the minutes science purchased are about to explode into 4 burning carriers and a scoreboard the world still studies. American resolve. John C. Waldron looks each man in the eye and points his finger toward the smoke on the horizon. VT-8 will go alone if it must. 15 TBD-1 Devastators drop to wave-top height and run straight at the carriers that bombed Pearl Harbor. Zeros sweep in. Tracers rake canopies and engines that can barely make 100 knots with a torpedo hung beneath. One by one they burn, cartwheel, or vanish into white spray. Waldron dies on course. George H. Gay, Jr. hits the water with shrapnel in his leg and a seat cushion under his chest. He watches his squadron erased in minutes and still tells himself, "Hold course, hold faith." VT-6 from Enterprise and VT-3 from Yorktown follow the same low road, bleeding men to keep enemy fighters pinned at sea level. That is the geometry that changes the day. It is paid for in lives. It is how America fights when the math says you cannot win. Here is the truth that feels impossible. Those torpedo planes score almost no hits. Their gift is time. They drag the guard dogs away from the porch. They force pilots to look down and chase. Every second they hold the enemy's eyes at low altitude builds a window for someone else. Up, in high, SBD-3 dauntless dive bombers form and wait for the moment 1,000 briefings promised. Down low, Devastators fly straight through flak walls because veering wastes the torpedo run. This is not blind courage. It is doctrine. Someone will hold the door. Someone else will walk through. The enemy sees slaughter and thinks victory. Then, the impossible starts to happen. A Japanese pilot yells into his mask as another low torpedo plane takes forever to fall. He has no time to climb back to the altitudes that matter. He does not know that altitude is the American weapon now. Gay floats and sees it all, the perfect, terrible design. He will later say, "I saw the whole thing," and that sentence becomes a flag over every squadron that follows. The men who died at Wavetop did not die for nothing. They pulled a steel umbrella down to sea level and left the roof open. In 5 minutes, America will throw fire through that hole and set history on a new course. Enterprise smells like hot oil and cordite. Ordnancemen heave A&M 65, 1,000-pound bombs along the deck on skids, chalking fuses and safety wires with blackened fingers. Plane captains run palms across fuel lines and prop blades, slap cowls, and shout thumbs up. Spin a carrier 90 degrees into the wind and it becomes a factory, a belt line of destruction moving at 25 knots. Flight directors raise paddles and SBD-3 Dauntlesses leap the deck, climbing into a bright June sky. Below, armorers stack empty crates and drag new ones out. The choreography is a miracle written in grease pencil and habit. A single mistake can turn a deck into a funeral pyre. The secret is practice and the calm of men who have done the drill 100 times in storms. Logistics wins wars you never see. Standardized parts, interchangeable squadrons, fuel lines that reach every spot, elevators that lift the next bomb just as the last airplane clears the barrier. On American decks, the tempo is measured in minutes and muscle, memory. No speeches, no show, just motion. Crews load the SBD's centerline rack with a 1,000-pound heart and, when needed, 2 100-pound wing bombs. Armorers fit instantaneous nose fuses or short delays depending on target and angle. They pass sling eyes and sway braces by feel. The ship rolls. The work never stops. Sweat stings eyes, but timing stays true. Across the horizon, enemy decks face a different truth. Their system is fast when everything is perfect. It is brittle when anything goes wrong. Strike groups on fuel lines cannot pause to change missions without chaos. Fire curtains and crash trucks can save men, but not a flight deck packed with fueled planes when a bomb finds the right place. American decks suffer hits and keep producing sorties because the whole machine is designed to bend, not shatter. A plane captain grins through grime and says, "We make bombs fly on schedule, and you feel what that means." That joke is a doctrine. That doctrine is power. Now the Beltline delivers the payload of a nation. Each SBD launches with a story hammered into its rivets by factories that learn to count louder than any enemy plan. The next wave rolls to the edge. The ship lifts. Pilots salute. The deck smokes with heat and triumph. All this labor will pay off in minutes when hammers fall through sunlight again. The forge is hot. The target is ready. The factory at sea is about to stamp its signature into 4 enemy flight decks. Clarence Wade McCluskey looks down and sees a single destroyer Arashi running fast and alone, wake foaming like a bright arrow across the sea. He should turn for home. Fuel is thin. Maps say the search pattern is over. But the wake point's somewhere that matters. He orders a course change that feels like a coin flip and proves to be a key in a lock. Ahead, funnels smoke on the horizon. Kaga, Akagi, Soru. The math of chance turns into the math of decision. McCluskey splits the attack, and the sky tightens like a fist. Richard H. Dick Best leads VB6. He pushes over and rides the Sunday. He will hit Akagi with a single bomb that punches through the flight deck and detonates among fueled aircraft. It is a shot a nation feels. In that same minute, VS-6 buries Kaga in impacts, and another American squadron opens Soru like a furnace door. Watch how the pieces fit. Torpedo planes dragged fighters down. McCluskey found the carriers by reading a destroyer's wake. Doctrine put the leader over the flagship. Practice made the release steady. When people say luck, tell them luck looks a lot like decisions taken fast by men trained to act. Here is the chapter's question, the one that seems unfair to ask while engines scream. How do you coordinate killers across empty ocean without satellites, computers, or a shared frequency map? You do it with rehearsals, brevity codes, and trust that empowers lieutenants to decide and captains to accept it. Pilots brief altitudes, headings, and timing windows. They launch with an idea, not a leash. They adjust in the air when the world shifts. That is the American edge. Plan hard, execute simple, adapt faster than the other guy can think. On deck, a Japanese officer stares at 3 flight decks on fire and cannot find words big enough. Pilots circle with nowhere to land. Controllers shout themselves hoarse into heat and blackout smoke. You can hear the logic of empire crack. It is the sound of a plan that assumed it would never meet people like these, fighting like this, with tools built by a continent that builds for keeps. Best pulls out of his dive and feels the blast suck at his tail. He looks once, then looks away. The target is finished. The mission is not. There is still Hiryu, somewhere to the north, and she is angry. The next minutes will be cruel. The outcome is already bending. Hiryu bares her teeth. Dive bombers find Yorktown near noon and punch holes in her deck. Repair parties move before the smoke settles. Pumps cough, valves turn. Surgeons and mess cooks pass hoses shoulder to shoulder. By mid-afternoon, torpedo planes slide in at sea level. 2 hits at 1,442, 1,445 kick her gut and steal her breath. Captain Elliot Buckmaster gives the only order a true captain can when you cannot save steel without killing men. Abandon ship. Boats shove off heavy with burned sailors and stunned faces. Then something wondrous happens. The ship does not die. It is easy to miss the miracle because it is work, not fireworks. Fire curtains hiss and droop. Patch teams hammer shoring into living bulkheads. Lines snake across passageways like veins. Chiefs run their lanes without waiting for permission. Electrical gangs feel fuses by touch. The carrier steadies. She lives enough. She lives long enough for her pilots to land on other decks and keep fighting as if the day has simply changed buildings. That is how you turn a loss into a weapon, by refusing to let it silence you. The enemy sees a ghost and thinks it is a second carrier. That is the kind of confusion that breaks timing on a battlefield measured in minutes. Strikes that should combine arrive in parts. Escorts that should be high are still low. Commanders who think they ended Yorktown are wrong, and being wrong at this pace means defeat. On our side, a Yorktown radio man points men to Enterprise with a calm voice. "Ship's down," he says. "War's not." Those 3 words are a creed. They travel the length of the task force like current. Later, another kind of courage will be asked of destroyer crews, who come alongside the wounded carrier, to give her power and hope. For now, while smoke drifts into a bright sky, the truth is enough. She bought time again. Time for searchers to find Hiryu. Time for Enterprise's hammers to lift with purpose. Time for the enemy to realize that even when we fall, we do not fall quiet. Yorktown's soul leaves her deck and takes wing on other ships. That is the American way: modular power, shared load, one fight. The Phoenix takes another blow, glows, and refuses to turn to ash. Hiryu prepares another strike. Deck crews hustle amid the stink of fuel and scorched paint. Then the Dauntlesses come again. Their canopies bright coins in the Sunday bombs fall through the smoke as if the sky were a machine dropping answers. 1, 2, maybe 3 hits. Fire runs the length of the flight deck. Men jump because steel is too hot to stand on and there is no path left. The 4th Japanese carrier in a single day becomes a pyre. That sentence still looks like fiction. It is Midway. Count it out loud, because it matters. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, 4 names that led the attack on America at Pearl Harbor, erased in an afternoon by a country that refused to stay down. Pilots who trained for years circle with no runway. Flight leaders key mics and hear only static and flame. In ready rooms that no longer exist, chalkboards filled with fuel data and altitudes are erased by heat. On our decks, ordnance crews wipe sweat and load again, because the day is not done until the last threat is gone. The scoreboard is not a boast. It is a gravestone and a promise. Enemy officers finally say the quiet part. The loss is irretrievable. You do not rebuild 4 carriers and their air crews in a year, or 2, or 3. You certainly do not do it while an opponent outbuilds you in every category that counts. The shock is not only the number, it is the speed. In 5 minutes, 3 flat tops were mortally hit. In hours, the last one joined them. That tempo is what breaks empires. It tells a fleet that its assumptions are dead, and its future is someone else's decision. A rescued Japanese airman, bandaged and silent, looks at an American crewman handing him water and cannot reconcile the day. Kindness from the hands that took his ship. Abundance from the nation he was told lacked resolve. He drinks, he nods once. He has seen what power looks like when it is tied to discipline and mercy. He has seen 4 carriers go in one day, and he knows, deep in his bones, that the war has turned. Tomorrow there will be searchlights and salvage. Tonight there is the wind over a black ocean and a truth too large to deny. Night falls on wreckage drifting under unfamiliar stars. The US loses Yorktown and the destroyer Hammond in the long aftermath. We mourn them, we count them. Then we count the other side. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, Gonakagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu and the heavy cruiser Mikuma sunk, while Mogami limps away, gashed and bent. Hundreds of enemy aircraft destroyed. Air crews, the irreplaceable core of a carrier arm, lost with their decks. On our side, the toll is heavy but survivable. Carrier-borne losses and Midway's defenders added together still cannot match the enemy's bleeding. Those numbers matter because they are not just arithmetic. They are strategy written in fuel and fire. Here is the math that makes jaws drop. In a single day, we traded 1 carrier and 1 destroyer for 4 carriers. We flipped initiative from Tokyo to Washington. We halted an offensive that had rolled across half the Pacific and put a nation of factories and farms behind the wheel of a war at sea. That is more than an order of battle. It is a message. Build free minds, trust them, equip them, they will do the rest. At Midway, American values became a weapon system, intelligence shared, science integrated, leadership decentralized, courage focused. Statistics tell only part of it. The rest lives in moments. A codebreaker sending the water shortage ruse that confirms the target. A squadron commander who knows he will not come back and goes anyway. A damage controlman who ties a line around his waist and disappears into smoke because pumps do not run themselves. A dive bomber who holds his dive 1 heartbeat longer to put a bomb where it will change a century. Add them up, and you get the ledger of freedom. Subtract them, and you get the silence of defeat. The enemy writes sober reports after the war and admits the truth. Radar would have warned, doctrine would have helped. Humility in war games might have saved them from themselves. America reads those lines and answers with a promise to stay worthy of what was won. The last image belongs to the men on both sides who did their duty. Wreckage glows and sinks. Survivors float under a sky big enough to forgive anyone who learned. On our decks, young sailors clean tools and coil lines for tomorrow. The nation they serve has become the most powerful force for freedom in history, not because we never fall, but because when we fall, we rise with purpose and we bring others up with us. Midway is the proof.